Welcome to W Report. This is an analytical transformation of an interview. The recent SCO summit showed a visible strengthening of ties between Russia, China, and India, with Modi, Xi, and Putin demonstrating warmth and unity. Modi even visited China for the first time in 7 years. How significant is this meeting in shaping a new Eurasian alliance? And what message does it send to the West?
The meeting is historic. I agree completely. And I find that perhaps some observers in India, and not only in the West, are missing that point. I have been under siege. In fact, you probably picked up the recording of this telephone call that was coming in because I've received multiple phone calls starting at 6 a.m. this morning from different Indian broadcasters. And I have participated in their programs. It was one thing to talk, it's another thing to listen. And I was listening to what they are saying because these were not just one-on-one interviews, but they were panel discussions with various prominent Indians in the country and outside, and Western experts invited to speak. And what I heard was a bit surprising, a bit disappointing, because I don't think that they, India of all places, that their experts are fully appreciating what's happened in the past 2 days. I believe that Mr. Modi has, and if he has, then he will be regretting that he is not going to be at the Beijing military parade on Wednesday. But what is, to answer your question directly, what I think we are witnessing is the rise of India. The Indians themselves are exulting over what they see as the humiliation of Pakistan in one of the points in the joint declaration adopted by the SCO at its closing, that point being the condemnation of cross-border terrorism and the attack on India. Well, we know where the cross-border came from. It came from Pakistan. And so the Indians are celebrating that. Can you imagine the SCO has just put Pakistan in its place? Well, that is exaggerated. Let us remember that Pakistan is a protege of China, and this slap on the wrist for Pakistan could not have been approved without Xi approving it. Furthermore, the situation overall is much more complicated than these several Indian journalists would have it us believe. After all, Pakistan is a close supporter of Iran. Iran is an important transit country for the North-South corridor, which India wants very much, because it would give India access to the whole of Central Asia, which under the present conditions where everybody is scrambling to find new markets is all the more important to India's economic future. There are complications here of many kinds. I hope we can get into some of them because, astonishingly, they haven't been brought to light. And one of them, which I'll just mention here to seed our discussion, is the presence of the Prime Minister of my goodness. I'm speaking now about Pashinyan, Armenia, and his warm discussion, tete-a-tete, unforeseen in the program, with Vladimir Putin, which was featured on yesterday's wrap-up of the week's news hosted by Mr. Kiselov. I hope we get to that because it shows how all of these countries that are members or observers or guests of the SCO have interests that are intertwined, and some of them are conflicting. When you have 25, 26 countries, it's not surprising that there will also be conflicting interests. And there you have a summit like the one of the last 2 days, which provides a platform, a venue for these various parties to get together in quick sequence so that discussions between two can then be extended to their circle. And that is what's happened in the last 2 days. I believe that, for example, that Armenia was roped into this probably by the Indians or by Xi. As you may be aware, Mr. Macron in France has done his best to ruin relations between Russia and Armenia. And what you had, and was shown on Russian television yesterday, was the two of them, Putin and Pashinyan, sitting next to one another, and Pashinyan said, "Oh yes, Vladimir Vladimirovich, you are my good friend." And well, this of course was lapped up by the Russian news commentators. But there are these little details, and they tell you the part what is visible. They tell you that a lot is going on that is invisible. But coming back to the question of India, and coming back to what the SEO stands for, because there's a lot of confusion in the broad public. How is this different from BRICS? And well, BRICS is a global organization, and it has in its membership key founding members countries like Brazil or South Africa, which are not terribly interested in issues that move Russia and China, for example. And they hold up progress in the integration of BRICS because they have their own concerns about relations with the United States and whether or not they're tipping too far against the United States and so forth. The SHOS, as the Russians call it, or SCO, it was founded about 30 years ago and had at its job description, as its mission, to bring security to that East Asian region. It was founded by Russia and China, primarily, first of all, to moderate their competition for the Central Asian countries, and also, for the two of them, to coordinate actions to keep the United States and other interlopers out of the region. Officially, its task was to combat terrorism and to combat narco trafficking. Now, what we saw in the last 2 days is a vast expansion of its remit, of its self-definition. It is taking on features of BRICS, that is an economic dimension. Mr. Xi rolled out the plans, or the announced plans, to create a CSO, SCO bank, a bank for development. This is remarkable. We see, oh my goodness, the friends are back. We see the attempt to integrate this vast region financially and economically, recalling that its global contribution of GDP is $24 trillion. Now, it does not do away with the importance of the United States as a global trade influencer, but it is very significant. Again, the concentration is on Eurasia. There are at the margins Belarus. Mr. Lukashenko was there and was warmly greeted. There is the entrance of the Middle Eastern countries, and that is PERSEO, the United Arab Emirates. And I think they fit into the financial dimension as possible supporters, backers of this new bank that is planned for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, what about the languages? Well, the working languages of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are Russian and Mandarin. That tells you who runs the show. This is a point that somehow commentators in the West just don't talk about. They talk about 25 countries are there, la la la, but who is running the show? Is Russia and China. I think for India, but judging by the body language between Xi, Putin, and Modi in the final hours when they're all together, and they were conferring together, we see the prospect or the invitation for India to rise as one of the governing countries of the SCO. And that is, if that is fulfilled, is dramatic change. At the same time, coming into this, I think Mr. Modi missed opportunities. I think his stopping in Japan was a mistake. Obviously, it was a message. He was giving a message to the Chinese that don't think that we're going to fall to bed with you tomorrow, that we have our own options. And his decision not to participate or not to witness the military parade in Beijing, I think that was a bad decision. After all, the parade is celebrating the end of the war in the Pacific. India was not a country in 1945, but there were a lot of Indian soldiers who fought the Japanese in the Pacific as soldiers in the British Empire. The Indians in both fronts, both in Europe and in Asia, lost 1.5 million soldiers in World War II. And I think it was a mistake for Modi not to honor the memory of those compatriots who died putting an end to World War II in the Pacific. By the same token, I think it is very sad that Donald Trump will not be there because, of course, the Americans had a decisive role also in liberation of island after island of occupied territory from the Japanese, and he's not going to be there. The United States will not be represented at the proper level at this landmark event. The Chinese, since nobody talks about it much, they have very few military parades. They are not like the Russians every year. And this is a big deal. And so for Modi not to be there, for Trump not to be there, I think is a big mistake.
At the SCO summit, we witnessed more than just a meeting of leaders. We saw the formation of a new center of power in Eurasia. Putin, Xi, and Modi openly displayed friendship and strategic alignment, despite past tensions. This wasn't just symbolism. It was a clear signal. Russia, China, and India are ready to build their own system of security and economic cooperation. The SCO is no longer just a formality. It's becoming a tool for real integration. The West has no place here, and that's becoming increasingly clear. How does the SCO manage to function with so many competing national interests, like China-India or India-Pakistan, without relying on ideological unity like Western alliances do? Is its strength precisely in allowing members to prioritize national interests over shared ideology?
No, it isn't unaccounted. These countries have their diverse interests, and some of them, leaders, of course, understand this as sovereignty and are unwilling to compromise on it, as India has shown by its refusal to follow the diktat of Donald Trump, respecting their trade in Russian petroleum. And this subject has been much in discussion among the commentators on the Indian broadcasters, and these are NewsX World. They are two different companies. CNN 18, and they are talking about what Trump has done only in the terms of what is obvious and evident, that they're being treated in a discriminatory manner, that China buys more oil than Russia does and is not being penalized, that this is double standards and so on. They are not looking at what was in the last paragraph of the Financial Times' discussion of the impact of the tariffs on U.S.-Indian relations a couple of days ago. They were talking about the impact on the Indian economy. In point of fact, the impact is on manufacturing goods and precisely on textiles. And textiles for export, mostly to the States, has 2% of the Indian workforce, as I understand. That's not a great number, but considering the size of India, still it has to be said. Now, this is quite distracting I regret it. But you see the insistence of the Indian broadcasters. The the and I am now losing my train of thought, Dawn. So let's go back to your question.
Should we judge India-China-Russia cooperation within frameworks like the SCO or BRICS by how well they eliminate differences, or rather by how they manage and address them, given that these are not rigid alliances but flexible partnerships that allow national interests to remain intact?
Well, now I understand why I was jumping to the following issue of where Mr. Trump stands on this. And this was something which I expressed with several of these broadcasters to their enormous surprise. I hope it gives them reason to reflect. They were all focusing on the superficial side of what Trump has done, just as the Financial Times, in its article on the Indian relations with the United States, focused on the economic side of the tariffs, what this means to their trade. After all, it is only on manufacturers, particularly his textiles. It doesn't affect the very big and important $80 billion trade in IT, where India is a major supplier of programming and business intelligence to American corporations or the pharmaceutical industry. So it affects a lot of people. It has a political impact because these are textile workers, after all, and they are going to lose their jobs. But if the very last paragraph, the Financial Times said, and by the way, this is going to really damage the quadrilateral arrangements that the United States has constructed carefully over the last 25 years to bring India into containment policy and directed against what's said to be China's aggressive ambitions and expansion, destroyed in several weeks. And my point is, this was not an accidental consequence. It was the reason for the tariffs to be imposed, because the tariffs are illogical. Everyone knows that, and they are discriminative. And why India is being hit and China isn't. It was precisely, I believe, because Mr. Trump, insofar as he has a foreign policy concept, it was exactly what you're describing. And he didn't think it up. He got it from Henry Kissinger, who was closely advising him during his presidential campaign in 2016, and whose ideas were reflected in Trump's first national security strategy papers in December of 2017. And this is relationships between competitors and not adversaries. It rejects completely the fundamental principles of neoconservatism. And people who think that Trump doesn't have an idea in his head had better reread Kissinger, 1994 Diplomacy, and reread the 2017 American National Security Strategy Papers. It's one and the same idea. The idea that Kissinger was promoting in 94 and had to move away from when he did his world order in 2014 was a world of a pre-World War I nature, of several major powers who were competitors, but no bloc. But, well, I say you go earlier, still earlier, because by the 1890s, there were blocs, of course. But earlier than that, and certainly going back to the period that Kissinger loved most, 1815, the concert of powers, the balance of powers notions that predominated at least until 1870. That is the vision that Kissinger had in 1994, when people like him were making roadmaps for the post-Cold War period, and that was his vision. And I believe it's a vision that he passed along to Donald Trump, who is trying his best, within the limited possibilities he has, to break up the blocs.
Kissinger argued that a lasting world order must balance power with legitimacy, respecting both civilizational diversity and shared principles. In your view, is Donald Trump influenced by this vision? especially given his rejection of liberal hegemony and focus on national sovereignty?
Well, we can ask, did Kissinger follow his own recommendations in '94? Of course not. There is a big change in Kissinger between what he wrote in Diplomacy and what he wrote in World Order, and that was that he got beaten up over his vision of '94 by the neocons for being a an unforgetting and unforgiving realist who was discarding values. And of course, Americans make a great deal out of values to drive foreign policy. So, in the end, in 2014, after saying that the foreign policy would be interest based, he threw a bouquet to his opponents and said, yes, and of course there also should be democracy values uniting some parts of the world community. But that is not such a big concession when you consider going back to his dissertation work on 1815. Um, it all ended. Yes, there was the realist approach, but it was all framed by monarchical principles. And so which were the values of the time. And so these ideas which are in competition did not completely rule out the other side of the story. The question is, where is the basic thrust? The basic thrust in Kissinger's thinking was realism and eschewing all ideology. And I believe that Donald Trump remains in that camp. And people who say, oh, he surrounded himself with Rubio. Well, if you're going to look for people who share that view, he wouldn't have anybody around him. There are very few realists in high position or with recent government experience whom he could have as counselors and implementers. So he engages, as I've said, in double talk, and he does within the limits that one man can do when he is in a power situation surrounded by many other forces. After all, there are limitations on the president's power, however much New York Times would like to say he's overriding it all. And he pursues a destruction of blocks. NATO is hard to get rid of. To really get rid of it, he needs 2/3 of the Senate backing him, which is not available. The quadrilateral arrangement never received that kind of formal formation, where it cannot be undone. And he's undoing it. So I firmly believe that Trump has an idea or two in his head, and I believe that the ideas that he holds closest to his heart, as he has a heart also, are coming from Kissinger. I remember that Kissinger was very, very pleased to have the ear of Donald Trump because for the first time in 30 years, he was not admitted by Obama to the Oval Office, who simply despised Kissinger and didn't want to hear his advice. Whereas Trump was very glad to take his advice. Of course, the role of Kissinger lasted almost a year. I wouldn't say long. That's understandable. There were many other competitors for Donald Trump's ear, but I don't believe that he has forgotten those lessons from Kissinger, and that I believe that he's trying to implement them within his powers.
Doctorow sees Trump's foreign policy as rooted in Kissinger's realism, rejecting ideological blocs, prioritizing national sovereignty, and seeking a balance of power. Trump aims to dismantle alliances like NATO to restore a multipolar world where nations are rivals, not enemies. Thanks for watching. Support the channel if you find this format valuable. More deep dives are coming soon. Until then, think for yourself and draw your own conclusions.